I thought I was clever. I thought I had it all figured out. I was so wrong it nearly destroyed me. Looking back now, sitting alone in this empty house that feels more like a tomb than a home, I can trace exactly where my life went from predictable to ruined. It started with boredom, that slow, suffocating kind that seeps into a marriage so gradually you don't notice until you're drowning in it. Mark was everything a woman was supposed to want. After 11 years of marriage, I could predict his every move. Home by 6:15, shoes off at the door, kiss on my cheek that had long ago lost any real feeling. "How was your day, honey?" he'd ask. The same question, the same tone, the same expectation of the same answer. We'd eat dinner, something sensible he'd compliment regardless of taste. Then he'd retreat to his home office to review spreadsheets while I cleaned up and wondered if this was all there was. He was an accountant, and God did it show in everything. He did. Our bills were paid 2 weeks early. Our retirement was mapped out to the penny. We had sex every Saturday night at 10:30, after the news but before we got too tired. Even our arguments followed a predictable pattern. Mild disagreement, rational discussion, compromise. Never raised voices, never passion, never anything that made me feel alive. I'd stare at him sometimes across the dinner table, this man who'd never hurt me, never cheated, never even looked at another woman as far as I knew. He was steady, reliable, safe, and I was dying inside from the tedium of it all. The worst part? I couldn't even properly hate him for it. How do you hate someone for being exactly what they promised to be? Mark never pretended to be exciting. From our first date at that sensible Italian restaurant with the reasonable prices, he'd been exactly this: careful, measured, predictable. I was the one who'd changed, or maybe I'd just finally admitted what I'd always known. Safety wasn't enough. Ryan walked into my life like gasoline meeting a match. He owned the marketing firm where I worked, though worked had become a loose term by the time things really started between us. Ryan Collins was everything Mark wasn't. 6'2" with shoulders that filled out his custom suits, salt and pepper hair that he wore slightly too long, and a smile that could make you forget your own name. When he laughed, people turned to look. When he walked into a room, the energy shifted. It started with lingering looks during meetings. Then coffee to discuss the Gloria account, he'd suggest. Then drinks after work, to celebrate landing the Morrison contract, he'd say. Each step felt natural, inevitable, like gravity pulling me towards something I couldn't resist. The first time he kissed me was in his office, door locked, city lights glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. My wedding ring caught the light as I reached for him, and for a moment I hesitated. Then his mouth was on mine, and I couldn't remember why I'd ever cared about being careful. "You deserve more than safe," he whispered against my neck that first. Time and God help me, I believed him. The affair became my secret addiction. Hotel rooms with Egyptian cotton sheets. Champagne at restaurants Mark would consider overpriced. Weekend conferences that were really trips to his beach house where we'd spend entire days in bed, ordering room service, pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. I became an expert at deception. Slipping off my wedding ring became as natural as breathing. Into my purse at hotel room doors, into my pocket before entering Ryan's car. I crafted elaborate lies with the skill of a novelist. Late meetings with clients who didn't exist. Traffic jams I'd never encountered. Shopping trips that produced no bags. Mark never questioned any of it. He'd look up from his laptop when I came home hours later than promised. Hair carefully restyled, perfume reapplied to mask Ryan's cologne. "Work run late again?" he'd ask, already turning back to his screen before I answered. "You know how it is," I'd reply, hanging up my coat, the lie sliding off my tongue like silk. "The Morrison people are demanding." "You work too hard," he'd respond, the same concern in his voice he'd had for 11 years. "Don't let them take advantage of you." The irony of that statement should have choked me. Instead, it made me bolder. I started taking bigger risks, longer, lunches that stretched into afternoons, leaving my phone on silent when Mark called. Once I came home with my dress on backward, I'd redressed hastily in Ryan's office bathroom, and Mark didn't even notice. Ryan fed my hunger for excitement, like a drug dealer who knew exactly what his client craved. "You're wasted on him," he'd tell me, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder in another anonymous hotel bed. "A woman like you needs passion, adventure, not some guy who thinks a wild night is trying a new brand of decaf." I'd laugh, feeling sophisticated and desired, like I was finally the heroine of my own story instead of a supporting character in Mark's carefully planned life. The thrill wasn't just Ryan anymore. It was the deception itself, the double life, the danger of it all. Some nights I'd lie next to Mark, listening to his predictable breathing, and feel almost drunk with power. This trusting, simple man had no idea who I really was. I was a stranger in his bed, a ghost in his life, and he was too blind to see it. I felt clever, untouchable. Like I'd discovered a secret passage to a more exciting existence while keeping the safety net of my marriage intact. I told myself I wasn't really hurting anyone. Mark was content in his oblivious bubble. Ryan understood. This was just fun, nothing serious, and I was finally alive. I deserved both worlds, Mark's stability paying the bills, keeping life running smoothly, and Ryan's passion making me feel like a woman worth wanting. The justifications came so easily. Mark was boring. That wasn't my fault. Our marriage had become a business arrangement that happened to lots of couples. I was still young enough to want excitement. Why should I sacrifice that? The affair gave our marriage balance. I was actually happier at home when I had Ryan to look forward to. I deserved this. I deserved it all. Tonight, driving home from Ryan's apartment, I was thinking about the promises he'd whispered in my ear an hour ago. Something about a weekend in Vegas, just the two of us, consequences be damned. My wedding ring was still in my purse. I'd gotten lazy about putting it back on immediately. Mark wouldn't notice anyway. He never noticed anything, I was thinking. About Ryan's hands, his laugh, how easy it had become to fool my trusting husband. The deception had become so perfect, so effortless. I never expected to find Ryan's car in my driveway or what was waiting inside it. The silver BMW caught my headlights like a mirror, and my foot slammed the brake so hard my tires screamed against the pavement. Ryan's car, in my driveway, at my house where he knew, God, he knew, never to come. My hands shook as I shifted into park, leaving my engine running, headlights still illuminating that familiar car like a spotlight on my worst nightmare. This wasn't part of our arrangement. Ryan understood the rules. His world and my home world were supposed to be separate, parallel lines that never touched. I approached the BMW slowly, my heels clicking against the driveway in a rhythm that matched my hammering heart. The driver's seat was empty. Maybe he was waiting inside? But no, Ryan didn't have a key. Mark would have. The thought died as I reached the driver's side window and looked inside. Blood. So much blood. Dark stains splattered. Across the cream leather seats, the steering wheel pooled in the cup holders. The passenger seat was a horror show. Duct tape tangled in the seatbelt, strips of it stuck to the leather with what looked like dried blood cementing them in place, as if someone had been bound there, had fought desperately to get free. My legs gave out. I grabbed the car door handle to keep from collapsing completely, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps that fogged the window. This couldn't be real. This was some nightmare, some hallucination brought on by guilt and too much wine at Ryan's place. But then I saw it, and the scream that tore from my throat was barely human. My wedding ring sat precisely centered on the Dashboard, positioned like evidence at a crime scene. The ring I'd carelessly slipped off 100 times, tossed into purses and pockets like it meant nothing. The ring that should have been on my finger but never was, when I was with Ryan. It sat there now, gleaming under the dome light, surrounded by blood splatter like a museum piece displaying my betrayal. I stumbled backward, my heel catching, sending me sprawling onto the concrete. The pain in my palms barely registered through the terror flooding my system. I scrambled to my feet and ran toward the house, Ryan's name dying on my lips as a new fear took hold. "Mark!" I burst through the front door, which I only now realized had been unlocked. "Mark, are you here? Mark?" The house answered with silence. I tore through every room, yanking open closets, checking the bathroom, even looking behind the shower curtain like a child checking for monsters. His office was empty, computer off, papers neatly stacked as always. Our bedroom was undisturbed. Bed still made from this morning. "Mark, please!" My voice cracked, echoing through the empty house. "This isn't funny. Where are you?" But even as I called out, I knew Mark would never do this. He didn't have a dramatic bone in his body. He'd never staged something like this, wouldn't even know how. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to call 911. The operator's calm voice felt surreal against my panic. "There's blood," I gasped. "In a car, in my driveway. My husband is missing and there's so much blood." "Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Are you in immediate danger?" the operator asked. I don't know, I cried. "Just send someone." "Please!" The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of flashing lights and uniforms. Police cars blocked the street. Neighbors emerged from their houses, robes hastily thrown over pajamas, watching my life implode from safe distances. Detective Morrison was the first to approach me after examining the car. She was younger than I expected, sharp-eyed with the kind of focused intensity that made me feel like she could see straight through my skin to every lie I'd ever told. "Mrs. Carter, I need you to tell me exactly what happened tonight," she said. "I came home and found the car," I replied, wrapping my arms around myself. "My husband is missing. I don't understand what's happening." "Whose vehicle is this?" she inquired. The question I'd been dreading. "It belongs to Ryan Collins, my boss." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Your boss? And why would your boss's car be in your driveway?" "I don't know," I answered. The lie came out too sharp, too defensive. "When did you last see Mr. Collins?" She continued. My mouth went dry. "Earlier tonight, we were discussing a project." "At his apartment?" she pressed. The question hit like ice water. How did she know? "Yes," I admitted. "And your husband?" "This morning, before he left for the office." Detective Morrison studied me for a long moment. "Mrs. Carter, I'm going to need you to be completely honest with me. Is there anything about your relationship with Mr. Collins that might be relevant here?" The other officers were watching now, their expressions shifting from professional concern to something harder. I could see them adding up the pieces: boss's car, missing husband, nervous wife coming home late. My voice cracked. "We were having an affair." The admission hung in the air like a confession at a murder trial. Detective Morrison's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened. "How long?" she asked. 6 months, I answered. "Did your husband know?" "No. I didn't think so." "He never said anything," I replied. She made a note. "And now both men are missing. And there's blood in your lover's car, which is mysteriously in your driveway. Plus your wedding ring, which I assume you weren't wearing tonight, is displayed in the vehicle." The weight of how this looked crashed over me. Wife having an affair. Husband disappears, lover disappears, blood everywhere, wedding ring placed, like a calling card. I would never, I started. "We'll need you to come to the station for a formal statement," Detective Morrison interrupted, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "And we'll need to search the house." "But Mark could be hurt somewhere. Ryan could be. Shouldn't you be looking for them?" I pleaded. "We are, Mrs. Carter, but right now, you're the only person who was connected to both missing men. You were having an affair with one while married to the other. And now they're both gone and there's blood evidence in your driveway," she explained. She didn't say the words, but I heard them anyway. "You're our prime suspect. The police worked through the night, photographing everything, bagging evidence, treating my home like a crime scene. They found no signs of struggle in the house, no blood besides what was in the car. Mark's wallet and keys were gone, suggesting he'd left of his own accord. But his car was still in his office parking garage. According to the officer who'd been sent to check, Ryan's phone went straight to voicemail. His apartment showed signs of hasty departure, drawers pulled out, closet half empty, his laptop gone. By dawn, the BMW had been towed away for processing, but I could still see it every time I closed my eyes. That blood-stained interior, my wedding ring displayed like an accusation, a judgment, a threat. The detective kept asking questions I couldn't answer. Why was the car here? Where were the men? Why was my ring, the ring I'd admitted to regularly removing, placed so deliberately in what appeared to be a crime scene? I had no answers, but someone did. Someone who wanted me to look guilty of something terrible. The week following the discovery felt like drowning in slow motion. Each day brought new horrors, each revelation worse than the last, until I understood that someone hadn't just destroyed my life. They'd orchestrated its complete annihilation, like a maestro conducting a symphony of revenge. Mark never came home. Ryan never answered his phone. The police investigation stalled like a car with no engine. Plenty of blood evidence, but no bodies, no witnesses, no clear crime beyond two. Men who'd seemingly vanished into thin air. But their suspicion of me only grew with each passing hour, fed by the facts that I couldn't dispute. I was the cheating wife, the common denominator, the one with the most to gain if both men disappeared. The first demolition charge detonated 3 days after the discovery when I tried to buy groceries. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your card's been declined," the cashier said, not meeting my eyes. Behind me, I could feel the weight of stares from neighbors who'd already heard the gossip. Emily Carter, the woman whose husband and lover both disappeared on the same night. "That's impossible." "Try it again," I insisted. She did. Same result. I fumbled for another card, then another. All declined. The growing line behind me shifted restlessly as my face burned with humiliation. I'll have to come back," I mumbled, abandoning my cart and fleeing to my car where I called the bank with shaking fingers. "I'm showing a zero balance on all accounts, Mrs. Carter," the representative said after an eternity on hold. "That's impossible. We had over 40,000 in savings, 15 in checking." I protested. "The accounts were closed 3 days ago by Mr. Mark Carter. He withdrew all funds and closed the accounts," they explained. The phone slipped from my numb fingers. Mark had drained everything, not just the checking, not just the savings, but everything. The investment accounts I discovered later that day, gone. The emergency fund we'd hidden in an online bank, emptied. Even the small inheritance from my mother that I'd kept separate, somehow, impossibly, drained. I was penniless, completely, utterly penniless. The mortgage payment bounced the next day. The bank called within hours, their tone shifting from courtesy to cold professionalism when they realized I had no money to make it right. The credit cards I'd been using stopped working one by one. Maxed out on cash advances I hadn't made, payments bounced from accounts that no longer existed. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by paper statements I'd printed in desperation, trying to understand how 11 years of financial stability had evaporated in less than a week. Every trail led to the same conclusion. Mark had systematically destroyed our financial life. But from where? How? The police said his credit cards hadn't been used, his phone was off, his car abandoned. Detective Morrison stopped by on day 5, her presence filling my doorway like a threat. "Any word from your husband, Mrs. Carter?" she asked. "You know there hasn't been," I replied. I couldn't keep the exhaustion from my voice. "Have you found anything?" "The blood in the car matches Mr. Collins's type, but without a body, we can't confirm anything. No hospitals have admitted anyone matching either man's description. Mr. Collins's passport hasn't been used. Neither has your husband's," she reported. "So they just vanished?" I asked. Her smile was thin. "People don't just vanish. Mrs. Carter, someone knows where they are." The implication hung between us like a blade. After she left, I realized the house had become my prison. I couldn't leave without feeling eyes on me. Neighbors watching from behind curtains, whispering about the woman whose husband discovered her affair and disappeared. The local news had picked up the story. Love triangle mystery. 2 men missing, wife under suspicion. At night, the house transformed into something sinister. Every creak of settling wood sounded like footsteps. Every shadow through the curtains looked like a figure watching. I'd started sleeping with a knife under my pillow, though I wasn't sure who I was more afraid of, an intruder or Mark himself, because I'd begun to believe Mark was alive. More than alive, he was orchestrating this. The belief started with small things. My laptop webcam light flickering on when I wasn't using it. The feeling of being watched that grew so intense I'd covered all the mirrors, unable to shake the sensation that someone was on the other side. Once, I could have sworn I saw Mark's sedan drive slowly past the house, but when I ran outside, the street was empty. My phone rang at odd hours, 2:47 a.m., 3:15 a.m., 4:44 a.m., always from blocked numbers, always dead air when I answered. The landline we'd kept for emergencies would ring once, then stop, like someone checking if I was home. "Hello?" I'd whisper, into the darkness. "Mark? Is that you? Please, just talk to me." But there was never an answer. Just the dial tone and my own ragged breathing. Ryan's disappearance was different, but equally complete. His apartment had been cleared out, not professionally cleaned as I'd first thought, but hastily evacuated. His assistant said he'd sent an email about a family emergency and taking indefinite leave, sent the same night he'd disappeared. The timestamp was 11:47 p.m., after I'd left his apartment, after his car had appeared in my driveway with blood everywhere. I tried everything to reach him, called his brothers in Seattle. They hadn't heard from him. Messaged his ex-wife. She told me to lose her number. Even drove to his weekend house, finding it locked and dark with mail piling up. It was as if Ryan Collins had been erased from existence, leaving me holding the bag for whatever had happened in that blood-soaked BMW. By the end of the week, I understood the totality of my destruction. No money, no husband, no lover, no job. The firm had suggested I take unpaid leave while the investigation was ongoing. My reputation was destroyed, my neighbors avoided me, and the police circled like vultures, waiting for me to confess to crimes I didn't commit. But the worst part was the calculated nature of it all. This wasn't random bad luck or the natural consequences of my affair. Someone had orchestrated this with intimate knowledge of my life, my schedule, my weaknesses. They'd known about Ryan, about the affair, about my patterns of deception. They'd planned every move, timed every revelation, designed every detail to destroy me while making me look guilty. The house had become a monument to my paranoia. I'd pushed furniture against the doors, installed new locks with the last of my credit, kept all the lights on at night, but it didn't help. The feeling of being watched only grew stronger. The certainty that Mark was out there, somewhere, watching me unravel, savoring every moment of my destruction. I'd done this to myself, I knew. Every lie I'd told, every betrayal I'd committed. had led to this moment. But understanding that didn't make the punishment feel any less cruel or the mystery any less maddening. I was trapped in my own house, waiting for the next move in a game where I didn't know the rules, facing an opponent I couldn't see, serving a sentence for crimes that went deeper than just adultery. The silence had weight now. It pressed against my eardrums, filled my lungs, made the empty house feel like it was slowly suffocating me. 2 weeks since the discovery, and the quiet had become a living thing that reminded me every second of what I'd lost, or what had been taken from me. Sleep was a memory from another life. I'd given up on the bedroom. Too many shadows. Too many angles where someone could be watching. Instead, I curled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that still smelled faintly of Mark's cologne, jumping at every sound the house made in the darkness. The curtains stayed drawn day and night. I'd tried leaving them open once, but the feeling of being observed grew so intense I'd yanked them closed with such force I'd torn one from its rod. It hung there now, crooked and pathetic, like everything else in my life. My phone sat silent on the coffee table. No one called anymore except debt collectors and Detective Morrison, who'd grown increasingly frustrated with my lack of new information. Friends had distanced themselves. Susan claimed she needed space to process. Jennifer said her husband didn't want her involved in drama, and Patricia simply blocked my number. I'd become social poison, the woman everyone whispered about, but no one would actually help. The house felt different now, corrupted by Mark's absence and my guilt. His office door stood open, the room exactly as he'd left it, papers still arranged in his obsessively neat stacks. Sometimes I'd stand in the doorway trying to understand how I'd missed it, the planning, the rage, the capability for this kind of psychological warfare. Had it been hiding under that boring exterior all along? Or had my betrayal transformed him into something I'd never imagined he could be? During the endless daylight hours, I'd developed a routine of paranoia. Check. The locks, front door, back door, windows, garage. Peer through the peephole, seeing only the empty street, but knowing someone was out there. Check the locks again. Return to the couch. Listen to the silence. Repeat. The mailbox had become a source of terror. I'd wait until full darkness to retrieve the mail, sprinting to the curb and back like something might grab me if I lingered. Bills I couldn't pay. Legal notices about the mortgage. And once, horrifyingly, a vacation postcard with no postmark, no message, just a photo of a beach that looked exactly like the one where Ryan and I had spent a weekend 2 months ago. I'd torn it to pieces with shaking hands, but I could still see it when I closed my eyes. My reflection had become unrecognizable. The woman in the mirror had hollow eyes, unwashed hair, skin pale as paper from never leaving the house. I'd lost 15 pounds from forgetting to eat, from the constant nausea of anxiety. Sometimes I'd catch sight of myself and think it was someone else, an intruder, and the scream would be halfway up my throat before I realized it was just me, haunting my own life. The paranoia had evolved beyond simple fear into absolute certainty. Mark was alive. He was out there, watching, waiting, savoring my destruction like a fine wine. Every instinct screamed it. Every fiber of my being knew it. With the same certainty, I knew my own name. I'd see shadows moving past the windows, too quick to be wind, too deliberate to be imagination. A figure at the edge of my vision that vanished when I turned. Once, I was sure I saw Mark's car parked 3 houses down, just sitting there in the darkness. I'd grabbed the knife from under my pillow and crept outside, but the street was empty, leaving me standing in my pajamas, armed and insane-looking, while Mrs. Gloria watched from her window and probably called the police again. They'd stopped, responding to my calls about prowlers, about strange noises, about feeling watched. Detective Morrison had told me bluntly that without evidence, without sightings confirmed by anyone but me, there was nothing they could do. Maybe you should talk to someone, she'd suggested, meaning a therapist, meaning she thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. The worst times were between 3 and 4 a.m., the dead zone when the world felt empty except for me and whoever was watching. I'd sit in the darkness, knife in my lap, listening to the house breathe around me. Sometimes I'd hear something, a creak that wasn't the house settling, a whisper that wasn't wind, and I'd freeze, every muscle locked, waiting for Mark to finally show himself. "I know you're there," I'd whisper to the darkness. "I know you're watching. Just come out. Just end this." But he never did. If it was even him. If I wasn't just going insane, creating phantoms from guilt and isolation. The wedding ring haunted me most of all. That image, my ring centered on the bloodied dashboard, had burned itself into my retinas. I'd see it every time I blinked, this symbol of my broken vows transformed into evidence of my guilt. The police still had it, evidence in a case that would never be solved, a mystery that would never be explained. I'd started leaving lights on in specific patterns, changing them each night like a code. If Mark was watching, I wanted him to know I knew. Kitchen light on, bedroom off, then bathroom on, living room off, sending messages to no one, or to someone who might be documenting my descent into madness. The money situation had passed from crisis to catastrophe. The foreclosure notice had arrived yesterday, 30 days to vacate, 30 days before I'd be homeless as well as penniless. I'd laughed when I read it, actually laughed until I was sobbing, curled on the floor, understanding that this was the final act of my destruction. Even the house, this prison that had become my whole world, would be taken from me. Ryan remained a ghost. The investigation into his disappearance had stalled completely. His blood in the car, but no body. No credit card usage. No phone activity. The business was being run by his partners, who'd made it clear I was never to contact them again. The police theory was that he'd fled after some kind of altercation, but I knew better. Whatever had happened to Ryan, Mark was behind it. I was certain of it the way I was certain the sun would rise, even if I couldn't prove it, even if no one believed me. Sometimes, in my more lucid moments, I could appreciate the genius of it. Mark had destroyed me without laying a finger on me, without showing his face, without leaving a single piece of evidence that pointed to him rather than me. He'd turned my affair into a weapon that destroyed my entire life, leaving me alive to suffer in the wreckage. Other times, the paranoia would surge back, and I'd be convinced he was in the house with me somehow. In the walls, in the attic, in the basement I'd stopped going into because the darkness down there felt alive. I'd hear breathing that wasn't mine, footsteps that matched no one's movement, whispers that might have been wind or might have been Mark listing all the ways I'd betrayed him. The transformation was complete. I'd gone from a woman who thought she was clever, who thought she could have it all, to this, a paranoid, isolated wreck jumping at shadows and talking to ghosts. Every moment of terror was payment for every lie I'd told, every time I'd slipped off my wedding ring, every night I'd come home to Mark with another man's scent on my skin. The guilt and fear had twisted together into something that felt like madness, or maybe clarity. Maybe this was what it felt like to finally see the truth of what I'd done, what I'd destroyed, what I'd become. The BMW is gone now, towed away weeks ago, but I still see it every time I look at the driveway. The blood. The duct tape. My wedding ring displayed like a museum piece documenting my betrayal. The police eventually gave up, the case cold without bodies, without evidence beyond blood and suspicion. Detective Morrison's final visit was brief. They'd keep the case open, she said, but without new leads, there was nothing more they could do. The look she gave me said everything. "We know you're involved somehow, even if we can't prove it. The house will be gone in 10 days. Foreclosure final. I've packed nothing because I have nowhere to go, no money to get there. I sit in the same spot on the couch where I've spent the last month, watching shadows, listening to silence, waiting for something I can't name. The paranoia has settled into something worse than fear. a constant grinding certainty that this isn't over. Mark is out there somewhere watching me live in the hell he created. Or maybe he's dead, and I'm being haunted by my own guilt. I'll never know. That's the genius of it, the perfect revenge, the not knowing. I don't eat unless my body forces me. Don't shower unless the smell becomes unbearable. Don't answer the door for anyone because everyone who matters has already abandoned me. I exist in this space between living and dying, between sanity and madness, between certainty and doubt. Sometimes I think I hear his car in the driveway. My heart stops, every muscle tensing, waiting for the door to open, for Mark to finally reveal himself. But it's always nothing. A neighbor, a delivery truck, the wind. The anticipation is killing me slowly, which maybe was always the plan. Ryan never reappeared. No body was ever found. He exists now only in police files and my nightmares. Another ghost in a house full of them. I wonder sometimes if Mark killed him, if that was really Ryan's blood in the car, or if somehow they were working together. The theory sounds insane even to me, but insanity and I have become intimate friends. The neighbors avoid my house like it's cursed. Children cross the street rather than walk past my yard. The mailman leaves packages at the curb rather than approach. The door. I've become a cautionary tale, a living ghost story about what happens when you think you're clever enough to have it all. Every night I perform my ritual. Check the locks, close the curtains, grip the knife. Sit in darkness. Listen. Wait. Wonder if tonight will be the night Mark finally shows himself, finally ends this psychological torture with something more direct. Part of me wants him to. Anything would be better than this endless uncertainty, this slow dissolution of self. But another part knows this is exactly what he wants, if he's even alive, if this isn't all in my head. He wants me to suffer in uncertainty forever. To never know if he's watching, to never know if he'll come back, to live every day in fear of the moment he might walk through that door. The wedding ring haunts me most in the quiet hours before dawn. Such a simple thing. A band of gold I'd treated so carelessly, slipping it on and off like it meant nothing. Now it means everything. It's evidence of my guilt, symbol of my betrayal, the last thing connecting me to the life I destroyed. With my own hands, I've started seeing things that aren't there. Mark's face in windows, Ryan's body in the backyard, blood that vanishes when I look directly at it. The line between real and imagined blurred beyond recognition weeks ago. Maybe I'm insane. Maybe that was always the plan, to drive me so deep into paranoia that I'd destroy myself, saving him the trouble. 10 days until I lose the house. 10 days to figure out how to survive with no money, no friends, no family willing to help the pariah I've become. 10 days of sitting in this empty shell that was once my home, waiting for something I can't name from someone who might not exist. Now, I don't know what's worse. The thought that my husband is gone forever, taken by whatever violence happened in that BMW, leaving me to wonder eternally what became of him. Or the possibility that one day, when I least expect it, when I've finally started to believe I'm safe, when I've just begun to rebuild some semblance of a life from these ashes, he'll come back for me. The waiting is my punishment. The uncertainty is my prison. And somewhere, maybe, Mark is watching me serve the life sentence he designed. Not behind bars, but behind the walls of my own mind, trapped forever in the perfect deception I thought I was running, never knowing. I was the one being deceived all along. I sit in the darkness, listening to the empty house breathe around me, and wait for whatever comes next. Even if what comes next is nothing at all. Even if the waiting never ends. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
찬눈이 일로 와봐.
천문이가 남자 잘 조련할 것 같아.
아, 그럼요. 아침부터 텐션. 네, 춤추는 하나경님.
여기 지금 BJ분들 엄청 많아요.
맞아, 엄청 많아. 오늘 한 20분 정도 오시는 것 같아.
회장님 제목 바꿨어요.
뭐라고?
아, 내가 운전 중이라고 했는데 운전 중을 줄였어.
회장님, 제가 하나경님 거 핫팩 챙겨왔습니다. 잊지 마십시오. 회장님!
언니 고마워요.
네.
하필 대박 사건.
저기 뭐 백두산 타고 뭐 한 90개 남으시면 예, 저 BJ 수정입니다. 잊지 마십시오. 여기 회장님이 맨날 12486을 쏘셔. 혹시 12486 쏘고 4개 남았을까봐. 맞잖아. 12486 쏘면은 14개 남겠네. 제가 식사를 좀 어떻게.
저 내일 300일인데 좀 와주세요. 이현 오빠 저 내일 300일 방송인데요.
아, 오늘 진희 회장님이 왔다 가시면 가도록 하겠습니다.
아 무슨